Well, good evening. At 12:30 p.m. today, Governor Ron DeSantis signed into law the Don't Say Gay bill into final Florida law and likely has begun his campaign for President of the United States in 2024. The landmark anti-LGBTQ plus legislation is arguably the most regressive in modern history. Also today, anchor Dr. Julio Capo Jr. and Florida Senator Chevron Jones are published in the Washington Post, exploring the long history of using parents and children to justify hate and discrimination in Florida. We will have a complete review of that history. So welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news. It's 8 p.m. Monday, March 28, 2022, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
Hello and thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens, you will see it. Queer News Tonight is supported by viewers like you. We are part of the partnership between Happening Out Television Network and Hotspots Magazine. Hotspots is celebrating 36 years of the LGBTQ plus experience. We bring you the best of LGBTQ plus news, entertainment, and support of our community.
Well, I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson. Let's welcome anchor Faye. What? She is a radio and television personality and has a popular blog and YouTube channel aiming to unite the L and the G together. She's a hostess and MC for many South Florida events, an animal advocate, and owner of Faye's Fur Family. Also, make sure to catch The Faye What Show, the first LGBTQ plus morning show, Mondays at 9 a.m. Eastern, online, or your smart television. Good evening, Faye.
Good evening, everyone. Look, you have to excuse me. I'm super overstimulated today. Like between Tampa Pride, Oscars, Don't Say Gay, and these big ass earrings, I don't know what's gonna happen today. So, just letting you know beforehand. All right, let's welcome my brother from another mother. He's anchor John Hayden. John's been a journalist for 27 years and now works for several South Florida outlets, including South Florida Gay News, covering arts, politics, and philanthropic organizations. He spent the majority of his career covering the stupidity and scandals of Hollywood and has interviewed nearly every big name in TV, movies, and music. Tiffany Haddish once spent 4 whole minutes full-on flirting with him. Sadly, it just wasn't meant to be. Welcome, John.
You know, I watched the Oscars last night, and, well, A, stupidity and scandal of Hollywood, but B, I'm just glad to see that Tiffany's been able to move on and get past that. I love you, girl. Best to you.
Really, that's how you took her performance?
That's how I took it.
Got it.
Yeah. Moving on, we welcome anchor Dr. Julio Capo Jr. He is a history professor and the deputy director of the Wolfsonian Public Humanities Lab at FIU. He specializes in the history of race relations and immigration in the United States, as well as LGBTQ plus studies. He is an author of the book, Welcome to Fairyland, Queer Miami Before 1940, and curated a new exhibit called Messages from a Pandemic, AIDS Graphic Communication. Good evening, Julio.
Hey, I'm so jealous. I love Tiffany Haddish.
Oh, she's wonderful.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I want her to flirt with me. Let's welcome anchor Dale Stein. He received a master's degree from the world-famous Juilliard School. And he's a well-known photographer and is famous for his photographs of internationally acclaimed DJs, producers, drag personas, politicos, business people, entertainers, and everyone else in between, including our very own Faye What? He is presently the director of music ministry at Unity on the Bay and moderator of South Florida's largest LGBTQ plus Facebook group, Miami Gay List, which is now also on Instagram as @GayListOfficial. Dale is currently vice chair of Miami Beach's Human Rights Committee. And hey, good evening, Dale.
Yo, hey. It's great to be here again. It's been a while. And I'm very excited because this week, this coming week, starting April 1st, with a show on March 31st at Miami Beach's Art Deco Center, there's going to be an exhibition of the legacy couples. There are 14 couples that I photographed. So my photographs are going to be featured there, and it's going to be an amazing event. And then, of course, Miami Beach Pride goes through April 10th. And there are all sorts of events to in which to enjoy yourself. So please check it out.
Including the parade that Faye and I are going to be hosting.
And Happening Out and Hotspots are, of course, presenting sponsors.
Right.
So, you know.
And
We'll be there.
And Greg Shapiro, that's one of our anchors here on Queer News Tonight, is one of the legacy couples,
He's
correct?
That's correct.
He's that
But
old.
not by himself. Not by himself. He has a partner. He is a legacy couple.
He's not marrying himself.
Well, we are the reporters from Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Monday, March 28th.
Well, we're going to begin by queering up entertainment. And what do you think we're going to be talking about?
The slap heard around the world.
That's exactly it. Well, the Oscars say gay, gay, and more gay. And LGBTQ plus, there is a place for us. Watch this.
Well, we're going to have a great night tonight. And for you people in Florida, we're going to have a gay night. Gay, gay, gay.
It's the joke heard around the world, isn't it? Well, the Oscars started off with all the gayness we need in the world right now. As the co-host Amy Schumer, Wanda Sykes, and Regina Hall ended their opening speech, Sykes said, quote, "We're going to have a great night tonight. And for you people in Florida, we're going to have a gay night," end quote. After that, all three of them chanted in, "Gay, gay, 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 get it? Gay," end quote. When Ariana DeBose won the award for Best Supporting Actress, she said, quote, "You see a queer and openly queer woman of color, an Afro-Latina who found her strength in life through arts. So to anybody who has ever questioned your identity or you find yourself living in the gray spaces, there is indeed a place for us," end quote. In perhaps the most shocking moment in Oscars history, comedian Chris Rock made a joke about Will Smith and Jada. Smith then walked onto the stage live and slapped Chris Rock. ABC was in a 7-second delay, so you did not hear the exchange live. However, Japan and Australia was live and caught every word of the exchange. 30 minutes later, Smith wins Best Actor Oscar for King Richard and cries through the acceptance speech and ultimately apologizes, but not to Chris Rock. At the time of this broadcast, Rock has not filed charges against Will Smith.
So everybody knows what he said, right, when they went off. He said, you know, keep my wife's name out your mother effing mouth.
Yeah.
Right. Twice.
Twice.
He said it.
Twice.
He
Said it.
As if he does, not everybody heard it the first time.
Yeah.
Well, nobody in America heard it the first time. We had to watch it in
Right.
Australia or Australia.
Well, I was on Twitter immediately. As soon as it went down, I was like on Twitter
I bet
instantly.
it wasn't 2 minutes.
Not even.
Not even.
People started posting about it, yeah.
I mean, as soon as it was happening, it was like, Twitter. I mean, I
Yeah.
got
So did you guys think it was a prank initially?
I did.
I
That's
did
why I
too.
went to, I knew a site that was broadcasting in Japan, and I went to it immediately because I thought, wow, this is a fantastic joke that everybody's going to be talking about. And I went to Japan and realized, oh no, this
Not
is
a joke.
I first thought, wow, Taylor Swift and Kanye West look so different now.
As soon as, no, I didn't think it was a joke within the first couple seconds, because as soon as it went into first silent delay and then it glitched, like the screen froze, and I'm like, no, this is actually
From a production
is actually
standpoint,
happening.
you would
I was
know
able
that.
To, I was able to, yeah.
You
That
know,
makes
the
sense.
reason I didn't come to that conclusion is this is so outrageous, it could not be real. It was beyond reality.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is a joke. We just don't understand the depths of why they're doing it or whatever, but you could never imagine somebody who is principally the odds in favor to win the Academy Award for Best Actor walking onto stage and doing this.
I was shocked that he was not taken out of the theater, at least the venue space, the theater space. I mean, if the favorite nominee for visual effects editing had walked up and slapped a presenter, they would have been escorted out of the building
by the police.
by the police right away. But he went back and sat down. And here's the thing, though. The joke isn't funny. Jada
wasn't
Pinkett
funny.
Smith has been very open with her alopecia fight for a long time. And what makes it even worse coming from Chris Rock is a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago now, he did a documentary called Good Hair, which explored
That's right. About his daughters.
women's and black hair and what makes it special, what makes it black women a target. I mean, it was a really good
Does it matter
documentary.
to
And so
anybody
Chris Rock
that
should have
it's a
known.
bad joke? Who cares?
Well,
No, it was a bad joke, but I mean, again, now comedians are threatened. Can you really say anything? You know, supposedly people are saying that this derives from 2016 when Chris Rock had said other things about
Right.
Jada Pinkett, and also said, you know, that he should return the $20 million he had gotten for Wild Wild West. Oh, you know, all these things that were pretty legit. But I mean, he really held on to a grudge for 6 years. Is that?
Does it bother anybody of all of the comparisons today of Putin and Ukraine that Will Smith is the embodiment of Putin and Chris Rock is Ukraine, of somebody crossing a line and just basically invading your space?
Well,
there's lots of memes about
it
that.
just reeks of insecurity. I mean, like, beyond toxic masculinity, which is clearly on display.
Yeah.
I mean, it just reeks to me of insecurity, like that I would have to do this to make such a bold statement so publicly.
But you're talking about being Serena and Venus's dad, who is like, looks like, you know, a wonderful man
terrible
who
joke about
exactly,
it.
which it was
Terrible.
very confusing to many of us, you know. And again, this is a rapper
You haven't
who,
seen the movie.
this no,
it's
this
so
is
See,
a
he makes that joke. That's the thing. The father
that he's
is
supposed to be
so,
a very
a
very intense person.
intense,
Yes, I get
crazy-
that. Like many managers in sports and what they push their children to do, I get it. Still doesn't make it okay. You know, Will Smith is that rapper who doesn't curse. He's that rapper that is watched on TV in Bel Air, you know, in white homes. He is that black person, you know, that is just like all of you. Everybody loves him. Welcome to Miami. Miami is freaking built on that stupid song, you know, like.
Is it offensive to you or any of us that the largely white room completely embraced him even after that too?
Look,
There was no rejection.
It's so many different lines, Al, because like I posted today, I don't condone violence, but if you come at my wife, then you see a different Faye what? I am a super sweet person, don't mess with my wife. That was what happened.
But would you handle that in a different way, in a more civil way, in a more
Not an Oscar
adult
ceremony
way?
where you're about to be the trailblazer black man that wins this incredible award, and then you made it ugly by doing that beforehand.
I have watched every single frame of this video multiple times today. This is like the wrong envelope incident said, here, hold my joke.
Right.
But if you watch it really closely, when the joke was made, and it was clearly scripted because they had a cutaway ready to go, Will Smith was kind of trying to laugh it off.
It's not until his wife,
Yeah.
you watch her face.
Yeah.
of
She
him
rolled her
realize-
eyes,
Yes.
and he saw it, and then he went for it.
Yeah.
But he had 30 seconds before getting to Chris Rock that he could have changed his mind.
You
Okay.
know, I'm going to push. I'm going to push this on to a next story. But the one thing that I ask all of y'all, this is accomplished in a negative way. Exactly what shouldn't be happening. Historic deaf actor. For Best Supporting Actor, Coda winning
Incredible.
Best Film.
Yep.
All of the embracements, both at the beginning of the show and at the end of the show for LGBTQ community, but nobody's talking about any of that. They're talking about this.
I think as you say that too, it's just so important as we, you know, to allow black women voices, especially to take the lead in this discussion and hear, you know, so we could learn from this experience as a, you know, that is, as we all kind of think about where we fit into this, at the end of the day, you know, this is a conversation that largely should be, that is what we stand to learn from black women perspectives especially.
Well, and also, you know, when you think of both of these people, you would think that Chris Rock would be the bully. You would, you know, and I'm sorry for saying that. And then he wasn't. Look, Jaden, right, their son, tweeted right after, and that's how we do it.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Okay, that's, I don't see that as okay. I don't see that as okay.
Can we go back to Ariana DeBose?
Oh my God,
yes.
what an incredible speech. I almost forgot, but like Al was saying, this overshadowed all of that.
Yeah.
We automatically forgot that this incredible queer Afro-Latina woman won this incredible award in a beautiful dress.
There's so much talked about today that the winner of Best Actress will not approach Will Smith as she was walking up. Normally, she walked right by him. She did not acknowledge. He was going crazy for her. She didn't acknowledge him. And then she's on the stage talking about for the LGBTQ community and the mental health challenge and the Trevor Project support and mental health. And it was a beautiful moment that she did not have to do of watching what's going on in our world, and talks about that specifically, all completely overshadowed by Will Smith. Completely.
It's not the last that we're going to hear about this. More is going to come out soon.
For sure.
I mean, and the real crime here is that we haven't even discussed Timothy Chalamet's
No
shirtless
shirt.
tuxedo.
Oh,
my God.
or Kristen Stewart's no pants. Thank you, Mama.
We're never going to get off this story.
Not. We're going to move on to some worldview.
We do. We queer up the worldview. And Russia's bombing in Ukraine has killed an LGBTQ plus activist. According to Kharkiv Pride today, a 21-year-old queer rights activist from Kharkiv, Ukraine, was killed during a Russian airstrike of the city center. Elvira, or Elia Shumer, died at the Territorial Defense Office, where she had been volunteering. A statement says, quote, Elia was an activist and a patriot. She participated in all possible actions and democratic events of Kharkiv. Together with Elia, we went through 3 Kharkiv Prides and 3 Women's Solidarity Marches. Elia was actively engaged in human rights interventions and Pride performances. She inspired and motivated not only our team, but all volunteers around. People followed her into struggle for freedom and equality. And when she smiled, everyone smiled back. Elia was one of the first Kharkiv Pride volunteers that joined the Kharkiv Defense Office. She was brave and outrageous, a patriot and a hero. And this is how we will remember her and never forget, end quote. Besides her activist work, she studied law. Everyone at Queer News Tonight stands with Ukraine, and especially the Ukrainian LGBTQ plus community.
God, what a loss. What
Tragic.
a horrible loss. What a tragic loss. 21 years old. You know how much more advocacy she could have been giving to her people, how much more love and just respect she would have been offering to all these people in need. And now she's gone at 21 years old.
You know, it comes back to us in spades. While this happens in Kharkov and what's going on in Ukraine, we're at Tampa Pride and Palm Beach Pride, and we're enjoying the celebration and the food and the music and the dancers on the floats, et cetera, and so on. And this person is defending her city and
Her right to
helping,
exist.
just a right to exist.
In a country that fundamentally basically rejects her, and she's still saying, I believe in Ukraine, I believe we can make progress, and she sat there and she fought and died.
That's such an important point you make, the point you just made. But you know, I am sure and I fear there are many more stories like this that we don't even know.
We don't know.
And this one is just so symbolic of what is happening there, and just beyond heartbreaking.
Next, we queer up education. Texas Attorney General declares Austin School Pride Week celebration breaks state law. This week, according to Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, an annual Pride Week celebration in Austin schools is breaking state law. This is new territory, marking the state's latest move to confront LGBTQ plus rights. Austin School District said the event will nevertheless continue. Every year, the Austin Independent School District plans a series of events to celebrate LGBTQIA plus students, highlighting, quote, the district's commitment to creating a safe, supportive, and inclusive environment, end quote. Tuesday, Paxton sent a letter to Stephanie Elizalde, the superintendent of the Austin Independent School District, saying, quote, the Texas legislature has made it clear that when it comes to sex education, parents, not school districts, are in charge, end quote. Paxton said the school district must obtain parental permission before any student is subject to instruction regarding human sexuality. Paxton added, quote, by hosting Pride Week, your district has at best undertaken a week-long instructional effort in human sexuality without parental consent. Or worse, your district is cynically pushing a week-long indoctrination of your students that not only fails to obtain parental consent, but subtly cuts parents out of the loop. Either way, you are breaking state law, end quote. The school district replied that, quote, we are all Austin ISD. We embrace diversity, end quote. The school district said there were no changes to the schedule.
Good for them. I mean, the superintendent will probably be gone at the start of the next school year, but I'm glad that she's standing up for the marginalized students, the institutionally marginalized students in her district.
Yeah. Viva Austin. Austin just keeps like plugging away at it.
And you know, if parents want to not have their children indoctrinated or whatever that means, go to private school.
Yeah.
There are tons of private schools.
Exactly.
Catholic schools, Baptist schools, non-denominational schools. There's tons of them. Charter schools. Go to one of those.
The kind of clumsy way in which talking about one's identity, one's life, one's lived experience suddenly becomes indoctrination. This is the kind of slippery slope that the GOP has become very good at kind of maneuvering and kind of creating euphemisms for, as we see with the Don't Say Gay bill, for example. I mean, this is just a kind of restructuring of what it means to be out and proud. And like, is every day is Straight Pride Day, right? I mean, that is, imagine like when we see constant expressions of people living their straight lives, is that sexuality in our faces? choices.
There is the bullseye, in my opinion, because the Austin Independent School District blows a dog whistle for America to listen to, which is we embrace diversity. They're not talking about the diversity of the embracement of promoting, like we would in our community, diversity, lesbians, transgender, bisexual diversity. They're talking about we embrace the representation of diversity culturally. And it's a dog whistle that they likely are going to win. And the reason is because in the long run, these kind of laws, what Paxton is doing, can't survive. It can't survive the legal challenge. Right. Because at the end of the day, are you going to pretend people don't have sex? Because if you don't pretend that sex doesn't exist, heterosexuality exists, which means you can't show pictures of my wife or my husband because it implies we have a sexual relationship. And Austin's already blowing the whistle to say, wait, if we can't talk about the sexuality of the LGBTQ community, we can't talk about sexuality at all. That is impossible. And the Republicans will not be able to defend that and will ultimately lose in court because the lawsuit that is coming is about exactly what you just said, the celebration of straight pride every single day. And now, the one negative to this is they don't care about this. They only care about this November election, and the process of the timeline of the enforcement of this is too quick for us to do anything about it. They're very smart in how they're dividing and conquering.
That's 100% right, and it's just not about sexuality, right, or strictly just about sexuality. It's about families. It's about children. It's about identities. Like
I have two mommies.
Well, no,
you
and
can't
that
was
was what Pride Week in Austin was going to be about. It was going to be how to be an ally, anti-bullying, mental health, all these important things that LGBTQ plus youth and their allies need to be a part of.
Yeah,
but the modern Republican Party is built on bullying. So they're not going to have any part of an anti-bullying. And that sounds funny to say.
No,
but
it's the Trump base, totally.
All right, let's queer up South Florida and Florida. Republicans express outrage that America is calling Florida's Don't Say Gay bill the Don't Say Gay bill.
Wait, what?
Today, Monday, March 28, 2022, Governor Ron DeSantis has signed the Don't Say Gay bill. The bill has made national and international headlines unlike almost any culture war topic of the last 20 years. Conservatives say Democrats and LGBTQ activists are making a big deal out of nothing. In a tweet, Tim Carney, a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, criticized the media for peddling, quote, a false story that the Florida bill prohibits discussion of sexual orientation, end quote. Carney has since deleted the tweet, but he's in good company among conservatives falling all over themselves to declare that the bill will not do exactly what it was written to do. Fox News called claims that the bill would prevent teachers from discussing gay people a, quote, media disinformation narrative, end quote. The bill's sponsor, State Representative Joe Harding, proclaimed that the media is lying by saying, quote, that we were banning the word, that we were banning people, end quote. The National Review has published several pieces accusing media outlets of, quote, intentionally misleading Floridians and deliberately distorting, end quote, the bill's mandate. None of these people or institutions are confused about what the Florida legislation will do. Pashal knows that it was not written to keep students from learning about straight people, marriage, and heterosexual culture.
Here it is. I think it's hilarious right out of the bat. Fox News' statement. Fox News saying it is media disinformation campaign.
Fox News saying
There's
that.
no one on this planet, with the exception of the TASS news agency and Vladimir Putin, that knows better how to have mass media disinformation than Fox News.
And you know, what's amazing about this too is that I just can't even for the life of me believe that not all of these people have actual gay people in their lives on a day-to-day basis. They know probably gay people very well, and yet they're using this issue and distorting it, as we've somehow stated here, and what you mentioned earlier. They're using it to wedge and to create this space to win the election.
Again,
and then it's like they don't even believe what they're saying.
Well,
many of them.
It's intellectually bankrupt legislation with an intellectually bankrupt defense. That's exactly what this is from beginning to end.
By the way, frequently we get criticized at Queer News Tonight of, well, where is the balance of viewpoint when we have discussion about what's going on in the LGBTQ world? Where's the balanced alternatives? Believe me, if you have other alternative opinions, reach out to us. We would like to hear from you. But we have great difficulty finding it because we can't get you to come out on the limb to say and defend Fox News or Donald Trump.
I will
or
say,
don't say gay.
There's something important to be said, though, that increasingly, at least I hope that this is becoming a trend, there's been, 2 or 3 governors already in different states who have spoken out against, that is Republican governors, who have spoken out against the don't say gay type of legislation. And increasingly, that is, I think it's important to also, when we see that happening, that we commend that.
Yes.
Like that it's really important to be like, there's an important moment here for people to grow and for people, I mean, just because, you know, and that's an important space to create.
I think the worst part about this is anybody that doesn't understand what's going on, somebody that's on the fence, you know, and then they hear a news story like this and they're like, oh yeah, okay, great, the media is garbage. Let me not listen to what they're saying. You know, you're making people even more confused.
Yeah.
Oy vey. Well, next, let's queer up trans rights. Putin claims Russia is being canceled, just like J.K. Rowling. Whew. Russian President Vladimir Putin leveled criticism against Western countries, claiming they are trying to cancel Russia. In his speech on Friday, he referenced the criticism Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling received for her transphobic views and comments. Putin said, quote, recently they canceled the children's writer J.K. Rowling because she, the author of books that have sold hundreds of millions of copies worldwide, fell out of favor with fans of so-called gender freedoms. Rowling has made many anti-trans comments previously, claiming to love trans people, but also essentially questioning their existence. Putin, who has called accepting trans people a crime against humanity, now appears one of those politicians. Rowling, however, has already distanced herself from the Russian leader's remarks. She said, quote, critiques of Western cancel culture are possibly not best made by those currently slaughtering civilians for the crime of resistance or who jail and poison their critics, end quote.
J.K. Rowling has a friend. They can hang out together.
Yeah, and Ron DeSantis, they could all get together.
Putin does not understand cancel culture at all. He is getting his ass kicked in a second world country against a first world army, allegedly. She is about to have yet another movie that is billed with, like, the early graphics in the trailer says, from J.K. Rowling. So she has not really been canceled. She's going to have a $100 million opening weekend for her latest movie. This is not cancel culture at all, as we would understand.
Yeah, she really has it's a niche of people who are canceling her.
Yes.
I mean, you know, on the inside track, we know because we pay attention, and those of us who pay attention to us know.
And how despicable of Putin to say that, you know, it's a crime against humanity to stand with the trans community. I mean, Jesus.
But not a surprise at all.
The mental gymnastics to make that kind of, leap.
Well, there it is.
And I also just want to say, like, how I find so troubling the idea of cancel culture. Like, so often we just kind of throw, that is not we, but it just gets, you know, put in this box that being critical of people and calling them out on the things that they say is not cancel culture, right? It's actually just holding people accountable.
Defend your observation.
Right. Like having a position and you know, standing for what's right.
You know, it's so funny to me, the famous phrase, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
That's what's going on here, because I think both Putin and Rowling miss the point. Putin thinks that Rowling will be an ally because of his position in trans and her position of trans. And she is so horrified because he has identified her as an ally. And so the enemy of my enemy in this instance turns out not to still be my friend. It's really an interesting story.
Right. Next, we report on our partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. We're broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine in supporting that partnership. Happening Out Television Network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ+ religious live broadcast in the world, as more than 30,000 watch every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Watch this.
I'm Mayra Hidalgo Salazar, the Deputy Executive Director of the National LGBTQ Task Force. We are the world's largest civil rights organization, and we are stronger when all of us stand together. That's why Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
Well, next we finish tonight's Queer News headlines with a segment we call LGBTQ Plus Flash News.
LGBTQ Plus Flash News. A trailer for Bridesman, Grindr's first comedy series, debuts. Watch this.
I'm here just because there was like a really horrific accident.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. A funeral?
A wedding. My childhood best friend is getting married and I am a bridesmaid.
I could not imagine doing this without you guys right here by my side.
I'm here and I'm gonna stop this wedding. And if I have to hook up with her incredibly hot fiance, then I'll do it.
Something's going on here.
This goes all the way to the top.
How do we know he's a top?
Move, move! Nice legs. Giving me shades.
Oh my God,
oh my God. You might want to get her water.
I am the maid of honor.
That was toxic.
You're exhausting.
Yeah, if you think I'm exhausting now, try dating me for 2 years. It's hell.
Or try watching that show for longer than a minute. Grindr is officially throwing its hat into the content streaming ring. Led by the other two star Jimmy Fowley, the popular gay dating app is launching its first original comedy series this April. And the official trailer just dropped. Directed by the well-known Julian Bachman and written by Oscar watcher Frank Spiro and John O'Neill, who also created the series, Bridesman will be 6 episodes long and will also feature other actors like Sydney Washington, Shannon DeVito, Crystal Porter Bazemore, Megan Chelsea Johnson, David Mudge, and Calvin Seabrooks and Benito Skinner. Wow, good casting. According to Alex Black, Grindr's director of marketing, Bridesman, quote, Bridesman is tailor-made for the Grindr community. It's smart, queer, campy, and features sharp commentary on gay dating, heteronormative standards, and Grindr itself. We are so proud to be showcasing some of the finest talent in the queer community as we continue to find new and creative ways to connect our users. End quote. And I couldn't have said it better myself. And believe me, I tried. I was trying to say this story before earlier. It looks like a spoof of a TikTok spoof. And I have to wonder if it's going to be so bad it's good, or so bad it's just bad.
Wow. I mean, I never even installed Grindr on my phone, I promise you. And I might just have to now install it, this sick, sad rom-com, sitcom thing, just to view the badness of it all.
You know, I actually thought it looked kind of cute, but I will say that I think there's just too much content. Like, I can't keep up with all the new streaming services. I'm gonna not watch everything. So, but I might watch them.
Child, you're gay. That's not true. I know you're gonna be watching it. You know, in that trailer, I thought. I just remind you, Grindr, John Hayden is also tailor-made for Grindr first. And one thing, I'm a total cheerleader of this project and Grindr doing it, and you know why? Do you remember once upon a time this horrible movie platform that everybody hated and it was so hokey and you got the worst things? You remember what that was called? It was called Netflix.
Ooh.
Just saying. I would follow this much closer than you think.
Grindr and Jill.
It looks super cheesy. I don't know if I can make it through 6 episodes, but just like that, I saw all of that, and that was just as bad, so I think I'll be watching it for sure. LGBTQ plus flash news. Caitlyn Jenner weighs in on Governor DeSantis' transphobia as common sense. Take a breath, everyone. Caitlyn Jenner has stepped into the conversation over University of Pennsylvania swimmer Leah Thomas's NCAA Division I win after Thomas became the first trans athlete in any sport to win the championship last week. Yeah. Jenner, who is also trans and came out in 2015, wrote on Twitter that Thomas wasn't, quote, the rightful winner. She said that the runner-up, Emma Wyatt, should be the champion. The former Olympic decathlete retweeted a post about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis issuing an order recognizing Wyatt And not Thomas. Jenner, 72, said she agreed with DeSantis. Jenner wrote, quote, "It's not transphobic or anti-trans. It's common sense," end quote. In response to an article that described her comments as, quote, "another disgraceful attack on trans athletes," Jenner tweeted, quote, "I just had the balls." Yes, she said that. "I just had the balls to stand up for women and girls in the sports," end quote. Earlier this week, DeSantis issued a proclamation that declared University of Virginia swimmer Wyatt as the, quote, "rightful winner." And she had swum the, quote, "fastest time among all women swimmers," end quote. Oh, woman, Miss Jenner, you got to go to an island. Take Putin with you. Take DeSantis with you. I'll tell you who else is coming. I don't want to hear anything from you anymore. We need to cancel your ass.
In all seriousness, given her perspective and experience, I was willing to listen to Caitlyn Jenner's voice more than others because she can weigh in on this. That said, I did listen, and it's not common sense. It's still nonsense.
Yes, dismissed.
Yeah, I was just going to say a total lack of common sense, period.
It's not common sense, it's transphobia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming from a trans
trans
person,
woman, yeah.
a trans woman. You know, when I think of Caitlyn Jenner from here on after this story, I realize that the phrase is true. There are Jews for Hitler, and there are roaches for Raid. In LGBTQ plus flash news, we are going to move on to Julio's story.
That's right. LGBTQ plus flash news. Texas again, as superintendent pulls 130 LGBTQ plus books from state libraries. This week, a Texas school superintendent, Jeremy Glenn, told school district librarians to remove books from their shelves that talked about sexuality and transgender people. In the meeting with librarians, Glenn reportedly told them he had concerns over LGBTQ-themed books. His statement is our entire story tonight. He said, and I'm, quote, "and I'm going to take it a step further with you. There are two genders. There's male and there's female. And I acknowledge that there are men that think they're women and there are women that think they're men. And again, I don't have any issues with what people want to believe, but there's no place for it in our libraries." Goodness. If you are not conservative, you better hide it. Here in this community, we're going to be conservative. I don't want a kid picking up a book, whether it's about homosexuality or heterosexuality, and reading about how to hook up sexually in our libraries. Specifically, what we're getting at, let's call it what it is, and I'm cutting to the chase on a lot of this, it's the transgender, LGBTQ, and the sexuality in books. That's what the governor has said that he will prosecute people for, and that's what we're pulling out. End quote. Just to be clear, all of that was a quote. It affects 130 books in Texas. Goodness, I can't even, that was hard enough to read, much less to make sense of. But that is, I mean, it's just gibberish. Like, I don't even know. That's the nonsense.
It's a WTF.
It's a WTF is my comment.
University professor Dr. Julio Capo is vibrating. He is so confused. You know, when he says, if you are not conservative, you better hide it. Translation, what you're really saying is, if you are gay, you better hide it. That's what he's trying to say. I just say to Jeremy Glenn, dude, human sexuality is completely normal, And those people that say you must hide it, there's something wrong with them, not the human sexuality.
If you're not conservative, you better hide it. You know what you should be hiding, sir, is that receding hairline. It's coming for you.
What I love about this story is that this was recorded. This is out there and will be able to be played in a legal challenge, much like Attorney General Paxton's comments are now in writing saying what they're hoping to get. So now they're having to defend their views and they have to go on the record whether they wanted to or not.
Yeah.
Speaking of pulling out, I just want to say it's a shame Jeremy Glenn's father did not pull out before he was here.
Oh dear. All right.
Next, in LGBTQ plus flash news, new survey shows that Mormon support for same-sex marriage has doubled in last decade. A surprising new report from the Public Religion Research Institute this week finds that the Latter-day Saints, otherwise known as Mormons, are still more conservative than the nation, but show dramatic broadening of support for LGBTQ plus issues. The dramatic changes come for same-sex marriage, where in 2011, just 23% of Mormons supported legal gay marriage. otherwise known as marriage. The Mormons spent the lion's share of funding to defeat California's Prop 8 that reversed gay marriage in California. The new survey shows that has doubled today with 46% support. The Mormon Church involvement in California's Prop 8 galvanized the LGBTQ and progressive communities in California and then set off a wave of new state recognition of gay marriage, ultimately leading to the Supreme Court in 2015's decision. Of importance, opposition to gay marriage in the church has dropped 20 points, with now less than a third of all Mormons opposing LGBTQ marriage in America. When it comes to non-discrimination toward LGBTQ Americans, Mormons are actually even more supportive than the nation as a whole. Among Americans in general, 79% say they are in favor of laws that would protect lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people from discrimination in jobs, public accommodations, and housing. The new report with Mormons shows support is actually 5 points higher at a breathtaking 84%. Gigantic progress for equality in the last 10 years. Well, I think it's amazing. I'd like to bike with the guys that always bike around. That's all I can think of when I think of Mormons. I'm so cliche. I just think of the guys on the bikes, and I want them to come to my door and have a porn plot.
I mean, this is one of those things where, like, there's so much good. We needed some hope in today's newscast, I think, and that's one of them. And give people room to grow, right, and to do better.
Here's the hope, and I agree with you completely. 2 words: Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
The reason this story is so gigantically important is the radical GOP of the culture war that we're talking about, the story that we're getting ready to report on from you at the Washington Post, is a ticking clock. The ticking clock of this story indicates that 5 years from now it's going to be better, 10 years from now it's going to be better. And as it continues to improve, there's going to be more and more Mitt Romneys, and even more so, that are going to say, what are you talking about in the ridiculousness of the sexual identity politics that you're trying to sell Americans? And they're going to reject them. The GOP has a time-sensitive end date. That's what this story proves.
So if the Mormons are now supporting us, does that mean in the future I can have 10 wives?
You can barely handle one at the moment, from what I hear. And
wow.
He's telling the truth.
And I think it's a statement on just what has happened with the GOP and religious extremism in the first place. 10 years ago, Mitt Romney was the worst case scenario, and Salt Lake City was nothing. Now he's the voice of reason in the GOP, and people have timeshares in downtown Salt Lake.
Yeah, exactly. With a gay mayor of Salt Lake City. Yeah.
Wow, the tables have turned.
All right, well, let's move on. Finally tonight, we have a historic final story. Let's queer up some politics. Florida's long history of anti-LGBTQ measures claiming to protect children are launching culture wars. Well, as we've reported already, today Governor Ron DeSantis signed into law a new mandate passed by the state legislature, largely on partisan lines, titled the Parental Rights in Education Bill. It's called gaslighting. Its opponents have rebranded it to Don't Say Gay, as it bans teachers, staff, and others from discussing sexual orientation and gender identity in schools. Also today, the Washington Post has published an exhaustive history of anti-LGBTQ measures in Florida that have helped lead to this moment in Florida and America. Arguably the most regressive anti-LGBTQ law in modern history. It was co-written by South Florida Senator Chevron Jones and our own Queer News Tonight anchor, Dr. Julio Capo Jr.
The bill was among the laws that the DeSantis and the Governor DeSantis and the Republican-controlled legislature passed in a culture war-dominated legislative session that included an abortion ban, the Stop Woke Act, and more. DeSantis called 2022 the year of the parent in Florida.
These efforts form the latest chapter in Florida's long history of anti-gay policy and a political culture that has clouded forms of homophobia, transphobia, sexism, and anti-blackness as efforts to protect the rights of parents and the well-being of their children. Our history summary in this news report, in conjunction with the passage of DeSantis' Don't Say Gay, is largely credited to Senator Jones and Dr. Capo.
In the early 1950s, State Senator Charlie Eugene Johns led the Pork Chop Gang. That was a group of 20 state senators from mostly rural North Florida who dominated state politics and, among other things, they shared a commitment to maintaining racial segregation, especially in schools. In 1956, the legislature created the FLIC, the Florida Legislative Investigation Committee, which became better known as the Johns Committee.
After failed investigations on the connections of Soviet communism and the NAACP, the committee turned its attention more fully to another scapegoat it believed threatened the safety of Florida's children, LGBTQ people.
Taxpayer dollars paid for investigations of suspected LGBTQ professors and students throughout the state university system, purging dozens of women and men from Florida universities. In 1964, the committee notoriously published what became known as the Purple Pamphlet, officially titled Homosexuality and Citizenship in Florida, that aimed to provide information that parents could use to prepare children to, quote, meet the temptations of homosexuality lurking in the vicinity of nearly every institution of learning, end quote.
This anti-LGBTQ policy trickled down to local school boards and lower levels of education in a myriad of ways. Following years of largely embarrassing stunts and failures, the Johns Committee disbanded in 1965, but it succeeded in entrenching a pervasive narrative about children being susceptible to the corrupting influences of LGBTQ plus people in Florida's political culture.
A decade later, gospel singer and Florida Orange Juice spokesperson Anita Bryant helped catapult a new culture war in Florida by tapping into those deep-seated beliefs. On January 18, 1977, Metro-Dade County, representing today's Miami-Dade County, passed an ordinance that barred discrimination on account of affectional or sexual preference in employment, housing, and public accommodations. The ordinance resulted from a push by gay rights activists to secure the same protections that the groundbreaking civil rights legislation of the 1960s had afforded to racial minorities.
And yet, Bryant painted something far more sinister. She spearheaded a campaign to overturn the ordinance, arguing that it granted special privileges to a group of immoral people who might then corrupt, recruit, or hurt children. This campaign, which they called Save Our Children, Inc., seemed especially concerned with how the law would play out in schools. Rather than seeing the bill as extending civil rights protections to another marginalized group, Bryant turned the argument on its head and claimed the ordinance infringed on her civil rights as a concerned mother who would get no say in who taught her children if LGBTQ people were protected from employment discrimination.
Bryant's campaign tapped into the fears stirred up by the Johns Committee a decade earlier and resonated with voters. The ordinance resonated with voters who overturned the ordinance in June of 1977. The campaign proved so successful that it even motivated Florida legislature to ban gay adoptions later that year, a policy that would remain in effect for many decades to follow.
Move to 2022, and DeSantis' own press secretary labeled opponents of the Don't Say Gay bill as groomers, a not-so-subtle and historically coded word for pedophiles.
This kind of right-wing propaganda is nothing new and runs counter to facts and actual data.
Medical and psychological professionals have long refuted the claims that religious conservatives have touted to fuel their political agenda on issue after issue, and yet they continue to trot out the same arguments all these decades later.
But the evidence is clear. Such laws, in depriving use of resources, education, validation, safety, freedoms, and much, much more, constitute the real danger to children, young people, and to us all.
Well, today's passage of Florida's Don't Say Gay is really nothing new. It's just far worse than anything we've seen before. We invite you to read the entire publication of this type of anti-LGBTQ history in Florida in today's Washington Post. Well, first off, Dr. Capo, congratulations.
Congratulations, honey. That was fantastic.
It was really an outstanding read in the Washington Post. You and Senator Jones, what was the point of it? Why did you write what you did for the Washington Post?
I mean, so I'll just say that just to begin, that Senator Jones is, to me, such an inspiration, and that is to the work he's doing on the floor, on the ground, for our communities, and I mean every single one of us, standing up for
First Black LGBTQ senator
That's
in the
right.
state of Florida.
That's absolutely right. I mean, he fought not just against this law, but the Stop Woke Act, that is the kind of bringing in of talking about race in our schools. There's all of these things can't be separated from one another, and have been such as we said, it's been it's been a session that brings back the culture wars, right? That has really kind of reimagined them in some ways and brought them back to the fore, or not that they ever left, but came back in a new, much more aggressive way. We wrote this together thinking very deeply about the power of history, the significance of how important it is to understand where we came from and the past, because we are doomed, right, to think very differently about how we can best move forward if we don't understand how we got here. To me,
that's
history.
A powerful sentence, powerful sentence. Y'all's thoughts about what Julio and Senator Jones wrote in the Washington Post?
Well, I think it really puts everything in a historic perspective, obviously, but that's part of the purpose, and to bring Anita Bryant in, because, Florida has such a really tainted history with that, and now so much is just ongoing, and yet again, here we are again in the headlines, kind of in the same way when Anita Bryant was making all that dust with the orange juice and come to the Florida Sunshine Tree, et cetera, because, I was living as a child, a little gay boy, not even realizing, in North Carolina, and, I was hearing about Florida then. And so I'm thinking now that children in other states are hearing about this bill that's being enacted here and what's going on here, and it's going to have the same kind of effect.
There's this kind of expression that history often repeats itself, and the truth is that it doesn't really, in some ways it doesn't, because it's things change, we change, the circumstances change, but history often does rhyme. And that's the kind of, expression, so to speak. And I think that's really important for us to know, because we could also look back at the Anita Bryant campaign, right? When she was saying, in 77 and beyond, when she was saying these kinds of things that, this was going to hurt her children, she didn't want her, we see remnants of that a decade before with civil rights, that is and certainly before that into the 50s with the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education that desegregated schools, right? It was unconstitutional to separate, and in public schools. This is really about the fear of, and it was immediately framed by white parents, the idea that they were going to have black children and white children in the same spaces, and there's remnants of these and all these kinds of arguments, and if we don't understand, we can't separate them, and we have to understand very, very critically that this is not the first time that this happens, and it also won't be the last, but we also have history is also a guide, right, for us to really dismantle some of the most violent aspects of these things.
To me, that's one of the most encouraging things on your article in the Washington Post, because both in the 1950s, when the pork chop gang, right, and Senator John was doing what they were doing in Florida, it reminded me of McCarthyism. They're looking for the problem, and they've decided what the problem is, and now they're going to try to prove it exists. That was a lie. It was a lie with McCarthy. It was a lie with the pork chop gang. And so they're going to demonize LGBT. What's interesting to me on yours and Senator Jones' article in the Washington Post is that we can overcome that and move past it. And then that's the exact same story 20 years later with Anita Bryant. It might have taken a pie to the face, but eventually we move beyond it, and we move into an unprecedented kind of resonance of LGBT rights. Now we're back to another
40-some years after
another thing. So how do we throw a pie at DeSantis' face? What has to happen?
If I like to think of things, I like to have some hope in some things always. I like to kind of read a glimmer of hope. And one of the things that Anita Bryant won that battle, right? But she didn't win that war. And I think that if we kind of stick to, like the images of all these students, for example, of all the young people who've come in protest of Don't Say Gay.
We showed Winter Park High School in our report.
It's very encouraging.
Right. It's very encouraging, and this is moving in the right direction in other ways. That is that it's so important to not forget that you get a voice and that you have an absolute say in who you are electing and the work that they are doing in service of you and your community. And that without that vote, we play an important part in this. So
I'm curious, one last question before we close. Being a student of history and participating with Senator Jones in summarizing this history of what we've seen, using parental rights and protecting our children as the excuse argument to attack LGBT. from the standpoint of you being a student of history here in Florida, are you optimistic that we will prevail over this latest challenge?
I hope so, right? In the long term, I absolutely think we are. I think we will be. You know, it's also nothing even more recent. It's recent history. In 2016, the GOP put in their platform, in their official presidential platform, the idea that parental rights was another form of allowing conversion therapy to happen, right? That is because parents would have a right in how they could train their children, right? Or, you know, I think we become better at pointing this out, at identifying it, at marking it, and then we can attack it, right?
You know, great point. Exactly why we dedicate the amount of time that we do to y'all's article in the Washington Post, and exactly why Queer News Tonight exists. Today, Governor DeSantis signs Don't Say Gay, but we assure our governor and the radical voices in the GOP in Florida, you have opponents that are beginning to rally. And this is just the first of thousands of conversations that will do that.
So that's it. That's today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show. Is our community important to you?
Then help us by liking and subscribing. Ring the bell for updates and share the news with your friends and family.
Post this broadcast in the many groups you're a member of. Tonight's stories about our community deserve the attention of your family and your friends.
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support.
And if our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world. This is the only place in the entire world that tells these type of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. And that is the passion of the Happening Out Television Network and Queer News Tonight. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Faye Watt and John Hayden, Dr. Julio Capo Jr., and Dale Stein. We will see you daily at 8 p.m. Good night.
Good night.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBT